Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted to be talking with comics creator, writer Jordan Morris, and should I say podcaster as well.
Say whatever. Sculptor,
Yes, absolutely.
massage therapist,
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Uh,
Civil War reenactor. Say whatever. I'm fine.
person
Just
of many talents and
there you go.
interests. Jordan Morris, thank you for jumping in. Thank you for joining.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, yeah. I know that we are going to primarily talk about one of your books that's coming up, which is Youth Group, but
Yes.
also really enjoy your work in Bubble, of course,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
as well as some of the Archieverse. I don't know if that's a
Mhm.
word, Archieverse. So we'll touch on a few.
There's a verse for everything these days. If there's a fictional world out there, it's got a verse.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
The verses have never been hotter.
That's right. And they're overlapping.
Yeah.
It's good times to be a
There's the
verse.
60 minutes of verse, the Sheldon of verse,
That's
all kinds of verses out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So curious about your path to comics and what inspires you to work in this world of comics? Because as you mentioned, you are a massage therapist, licensed skydiver, all of these things. Um,
These are my passions. The comics just pay the bills, but
that's right, that's right. Curious about that link for you.
sure. Yeah, so I was a comics kid growing up. It was the 90s, so I read a lot of Spider-Man, a lot of X-Men,
Hmm.
a lot of Mad Magazine, Archie's, and yeah, so it was just kind of part of my pop culture diet growing up, and I always enjoyed them, but never really thought of them as something that like I could do. It always seemed like just like something a wizard did, and
Right, right.
they appeared in the store, and who knows by what magic they were created.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I had always kind of loved comics. I feel like I took a little break from them like in high school ish when it kind of felt like they weren't cool and I wanted
Right,
to have
right.
cooler interests like drama club.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, kind of found my way back in late high school through like Watchmen and Ghost World and Dark Knight Returns and some of those
Hmm.
kind of like for more mature palettes comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of like re got into superhero stuff in college, and yeah, just kind of kept on reading them. They're still just kind of part of my pop culture diet, and I love them. Yeah, so I've only been kind of sort of recently working in comics.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
was a TV writer and always had kind of like ideas for comics and dreams for comics I would like to make. But yeah, it like a lot of other entertainment industry worlds versus, if you will, it's a it's a pretty closed ecosystem. It's
Hmm.
something that a
Hmm.
lot of people want to do, so like it's just kind of hard to get into it. It's kind of hard to meet the right people and to um yeah, be on the right radars. So I had, I think in my late 20s, a friend and I came up with some comic book pitches and someone sent them around for us, and it was just met with uh, uh, the most the most horrible deafening silence you've ever heard. People could
Hmm.
not have cared less. That was a little discouraging. That like first try was a little bit discouraging, and then Bubble that you mentioned, the
Hmm.
sci-fi comedy graphic novel, still available, two-time Eisner nominated,
Hmm.
writing
Hmm.
by me and Sarah Morgan, art by the great Tony Cliff. That book started out as a podcast, as a scripted podcast over there on Maximum Fun, and yeah, then the great editor Callista Brill over at First Second got in
Hmm.
touch and
Hmm.
said, I think this would make a great comic. I was so excited. Yeah, I've never said yes to anything faster. And yeah, doing that book was kind of like my first comics project. And yeah, that kind of led to youth group and some of the Archie books and
Hmm.
all the other stuff I've been up to. So yeah, that was the first my first comics thing, and I'm really proud of it. And yeah, just
Yeah.
really like excited that it kind of was that first push I needed to open the door. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and a very stylish book. I love the way that it came together. And
Thank you,
this
man.
podcast has no sponsors, but I'm just gonna plug First Second here because
Yeah,
basically anything they publish, I want to check out.
absolutely. I was
Yeah.
such a huge fan of theirs just before, we were working together. I read a ton of first second books, and like, yeah,
Hmm.
not only do they like pick interesting stories and cool creators, like the books are all really beautiful. They like the binding is very nice,
Oh
and
yes, yeah.
and
Hmm.
yeah, and they always work with really cool artists. So like it does seem like there's a they all look very different aesthetically, but it seems like being very beautiful, striking books is something is something that kind of unifies all the first second books. And yeah, I think Bubble included. I didn't do any of the art, so I can't take credit for it. But yeah, Tony Cliff is such a gosh darn genius. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
I was such a fan of his Delilah Dirk series. Speaking of great
Yeah,
first second books, so yeah, the fact that we got to work together on that is like still something that I'm thrilled about when I think of. So
yeah. Curious about you. You talked about writing in television, writing a podcast, writing comics. There's been comedy along the way in many spaces and in many ways. And so I'm curious about, on the one hand, influences, inspirations, but also what it's like to work across media that way and to write for a variety of spaces.
yeah, as far as inspirations go, um, yeah, as far as comic in the world of comics, like I mentioned, big X-Men kid, big Spider-Man
Hmm.
kid, and it
Hmm.
was the '90s, so your Jim Lees, your Chris Claremonts, et cetera,
All
et
the
cetera.
muscle bound people and yeah, all of
Yes.
that.
All the impossibly shaped muscular people.
Yes.
But also like Keith Geffen and J.M. DeMatteis, like who did
Yeah.
those really funny JLI comics in the late 80s. I love those books, and they are still very funny to this day. Like they're
Mhm.
not only great superhero stories, but also just great jokes. They're a little bit self-aware, really ahead of their time. Like those JLI books from the 80s are just like miracles of tone. I think I
Mhm.
loved them as a kid, and like revisited them as an adult. I'm like, oh, these are still great. And yeah, and those really did such a great job of like, being a superhero story where the superhero stuff was taken very seriously, but it was also funny. There were great characters, you know, Booster and Beetle, Fire and Ice, like these
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
deeper bench characters that were really funny. Guy Gardner, um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it was just fun to see as a kid who liked comedy and comics that there was something that could kind of do both of those. Um, and yeah, and I was a big Mad Magazine kid, and
Yeah.
and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, that really like shaped my sensibility, and was an example of like comics as comedy. And yeah, I just loved those old Mads and just cracked myself up, reading them under my
Yeah.
under my blanket at night when I was supposed to be sleeping. So yeah, those all that stuff was very important to me early on. And yeah, as far as other media goes, I was a big Simpsons kid. I was a big Mystery Science
Mhm.
Theater 3000 kid. And yeah, and I think all that stuff kind of like made me into a comedy nerd that eventually made me want to work in comedy. So yeah, so those were kind of the things growing up that I was all about. Um and yeah, just kind of like but more recently, like,
Mhm.
I'm only kind of new to comics. So like when I was thinking about the kind of comics writer I would like to be, or um some folks working in the space that I really admire, like Mark Waid is so great.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I read his kind of 2015 Archie comics before I started writing mine, and they were just really inspiring. They're so funny. Um, but like don't feel old fashioned. They don't feel corny. They feel very like current, but also very Archie.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
in the first volume of those books, he has like an essay about how they kind of got started, and um, mentions in there that when he was having his first meetings with them about kind of rebooting Archie and about kind of starting the universe over again, like a big thing that he said was part of his pitch is there's nothing wrong with Archie. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
you this thing has endured, like you maybe wouldn't do the exact same jokes that you would have done in 1960, but it's there for a reason. The cores of these characters are still really terrific. And yeah, and I try and have that as a mantra when I'm working on someone else's thing.
Hmm.
Um it's been a very useful like thing to have in my head while I'm working on somebody else's thing, which is mostly what I do. Like Bubble is was a group effort, but kind of my, the seed of the idea was mine. And youth group, again, I'm working on that with a great artist named Bowen McGurty, and that is something
Hmm.
that we're,
Hmm.
doing together, but it was kind of my pitch. But most of the stuff I work on, I'm, just kind of a mercenary writer there to help.
Yeah.
And I think when you're working on someone else's thing, it really helps to think to yourself, there's nothing wrong with Archie. Like
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
something, this is around and they're hiring me because someone likes this. This is someone's, like this thing is around because something about it works. So I think
Hmm.
sometimes when you're, hired to write on a show or hired to write on a book, I think some people like think about how they can change it or how they can flip it or how they can reinvent it. And I think that's kind of not a great impulse to go into something with.
Hmm.
I think even if it's not exactly your taste, and I've worked on some stuff over the years, which is like, this isn't exactly my thing, but I need to have a job.
Right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, it kind of helps to start those creative projects by thinking about like, what do people like about this? What's good? I mean, you want to put your stamp on it, and obviously changes have to be made, but like, yeah, you want to like think about the core of the thing and why has it stuck around and why do people like it, and do your best to enhance those features. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, and yeah, and as far as like working across media on comics and podcasts and TV shows, um yeah, I'm, it's kind of just a, this is the modern entertainment industry, right? It's
Right, right,
very, you know, the I think back in the day, you moved out to LA, you got a writer's job, a writer's assistant job on The Simpsons. They bumped you up to writer, and you were there until you were 60.
right,
Um,
right.
that is no longer how the entertainment industry works. Maybe little parts of it, but like essentially, if you want to be creative for a living, you just have to do a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I think, when you're doing your pivoting as a creative person, just like, don't get too set in your ways. Know
Hmm.
that each medium and each boss does things differently, and it's an excuse to learn. Like you have to kind of learn, like for instance, when I was started doing the Archie comics, like they have a way they like their comics scripted. I had never done it before. Like they have a format they wanted in that I hadn't done before. So, I guess I could have said, here's my script the way I do it. Peace
Hmm.
out. But that will lead to me never working with them again. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
as opposed, when you, as a creative person, when you go into something new, like I guess it's really helpful to think about it as, okay, I have this essential set of skills or I have these essential talents that I bring to something, but I'm going to have to learn some new formal stuff. I'm going to have to learn new scripting. I'm going to have to learn new timelines. I'm going to have to like, work with these people in the way that they work.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think that like comedy and writing and storytelling, like, if you're good at those things, I think they transfer to a lot of different mediums, but you have to be open to the fact that like these people might work differently than you're used to.
Yeah, yeah. Solid advice. I love that. And you mentioned youth group. I'm curious about the inspiration for the story. Curious about. I know the tone from what I've seen is satire.
Yeah,
Some
I'll
nice
go ahead.
humor.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think that is that's fair to say. I'll do the quick elevator pitch for youth group if you
Yes,
don't mind.
absolutely.
It is a YA horror comedy from me and Bo and McGurty. It is about a bunch of goofy teenage exorcists. Our main character is a kid who gets forced to go to the world's dorkiest Bible study and finds that they are secretly doing exorcisms after Bible study and just kind of get swept up on this demon fighting adventure. Um, yeah, so the kind of the germ of the idea, and again, this is me and Bowen McGurty's book, but it was my pitch. Um, but the germ of the idea was just that like I grew up in one of these youth groups. I was a youth group
Hmm.
kid,
Hmm.
and it was this experience where so the adults are going to the big stuffy church, but the kids, they're going to this cool multi-purpose room where cool
Right.
youth pastor with tattoo sleeves sits backwards on a chair and talks about a cool guy named JC
Right,
who
right.
knew a thing or two about what modern teens are going through.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, it was just this funny little world that I don't think I had ever seen depicted well in media.
Yeah.
It was maybe either too kind of punchliney or it didn't feel like the person writing about it had actually done it. Um, so yeah, it was just this little world. And I'm like, why does nobody write about this? It's so weird. It's so funny. It's so like, yeah, there's so much opportunity for stuff for, not only satire, but just like teen drama. And I don't know, it just seemed like a rich vein.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then around the time I started writing it, I remember seeing a just random news blurb about the fact that in America exorcisms are on the rise. Like people are doing exorcisms now more than ever in the
Wow. I had
in
no
the
idea.
in the 2020s. And yeah, I remember seeing this video of just like these suburban ass looking kids on the patio of a Starbucks doing an exorcism on their friend, and they were just speaking in tongues and the kid was going crazy. And like obviously there's something like actually dark going on there, like perhaps this is someone who needs mental
Yeah.
health
Yeah.
professionals and not Latin chanting. But it kind of like gave me the idea of like, oh, maybe this is a way to write about this youth group experience. What if like these dorks actually had to do exorcisms and it,
Yeah.
was part of some larger, demonic plot. And yeah, that was kind of the germ of the idea. And I kind of just filled out the world with, characters that I knew when I was a youth group kid. And yeah, started kind of putting together the story from there. And then, I had kind of worked it out as a pitch. And then Bowen came on and we started writing the script and it is coming out next year in July
Hmm.
16th,
Hmm.
available for pre-order now. Get yourself to your local indie bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy a book. Youth group, pre-order it, please.
Absolutely.
Wait, did I
Links
answer your
links in the
description?
description. Oh
There you
yes,
go.
yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you. I realize I can get into like elevator pitch mode and I'm like, wait, did they ask a question?
No, no, you were good. I was
Great.
just asking
Okay.
how it came to be, and that was
Very
perfect.
good.
And once upon a time, I thought about being a youth pastor, and
Oh yeah,
if
sure.
only I'd had those like tattoo sleeves that you were talking about.
Yeah, you got to get the intense old English Bible verse tattoos,
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe like
Hmm.
cross on your back. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's a look. The cool youth pastor, it is a look.
I could have totally rocked it if I just had those sleeves.
Yeah.
Man, yeah. So you mentioned the book is coming, and so that sort of answers the question of what is next for you creatively. But I imagine that other things are churning. Yes, other things are on
Yeah,
the
I
way.
I have some kind of like unannounced things that I'm working on that should be very cool. I think if you keep an eye on social media, you will see those things when they are announced.
Hmm.
But yeah, youth group is coming out next year, and I hope to be at conventions and various comics events promoting it and signing books and stuff like that. So yeah, excited for next year, excited for folks to get their hands on youth group. And
Hmm.
yeah, more fun stuff in the pipe, hopefully. But I'll like be yelling about that on social media when the time is right.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing it out in the world. And as I said, I appreciate what First Second publishes and
Me
appreciate
too.
your work.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
you mentioned social media. Is there a social media space go to, or do you go from place to place on social media?
Yeah, social media. It's a mess these days. Yeah,
It's its own multiverse. It really
yeah,
is.
there you go. Yes,
Hmm, hmm.
exactly. A crumbling multiverse where realities are crashing into each other and realities are being wiped out. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Jordan David Morris on there. And whatever's left of Twitter at Jordan_Morris.
Hmm,
So yeah,
hmm.
I'll be on those things and posting about youth group stuff, youth group events, Comic Cons, things of that nature, and any new projects that might come up.
Cool, cool. Well, I hope folks out there will pre-order the book. I was going to ask if you wanted me to post date this, but I will go ahead and share it out into the
Oh
streams,
yeah, please, please.
so
I know.
the pre-orders are out.
Thank you, thank you. No, I would appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely something that's that I'm learning about as someone who makes books, like how important those pre-orders are.
That's what I've heard. Yeah,
So yeah, I would love it if the book sounds cool or interesting to anyone listening. Yeah, and smash that pre-order button on your nearest book buying website. We'd appreciate it. It's great for the book.
hmm,
And yeah,
hmm.
make sure you get it ASAP. Things sell out sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. This is true. This is true. Well, Jordan, I promised you a brief talk, and I appreciate your time. Appreciate the chat. Anything that we missed that you want to make
Uh,
sure to share before we close?
no, that was thorough.
We
Yeah, you've
try. We try.
no, love it. Yeah, both you and Bubble is still available, I guess I should say.
Oh, yes, it is out
Also from
there and
First Second, it's
so worth it.
available at your local book place. For grown-ups, not for kids. Youth Group is a YA book. Bubble has some gore and some spicy language in it.
Hmm, hmm.
But yeah, something for every reader.
That's right. That's right. And check out
Except
some
little kids. Nothing
chilling
for them.
adventures too.
Oh
Some
yeah,
chilling
sure.
adventures. You've got some pretty scary books in that arena as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
God, speaking of pre-orders, actually, those chilling adventure issues I did with Archie Comics are all sold out.
Wow.
I hope they collect them at some point. I think they are going to. No promises, but yeah, I wrote a story for Pop's Chocolate Shop of Horrors and Camp Pickens, two
Hmm.
of the spooky Archie anthologies, and yeah, and I think you might be able to find one if you dig around at your local comic book shop. But they are for all intents and purposes sold out. So yeah, hopefully they collect them, and if not, this is a lesson in pre-ordering. So
That's right.
all the more reason to pre-order Youth Group, guys. If it's sold out, you can't get it. What a tragedy. I'd hate to be you.
That's right. That's right. We're putting the word pre-order like in between,
Thank
like
you.
the like Fight Club
Yes.
blip. It's right there. Pre-order, pre-order,
Love
pre-order.
that subliminal,
That's right.
superliminal, whatever. Yeah, whatever wavelength you can get out the message on, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Jordan, and glad to have you back anytime to talk about
Yeah,
all the
thank you so
things.
much.